we were just talking a little bit ago about how my coaching journey, which has taken me really all over the country. I've coached in the Northwest, in Southern California, Georgia. Now I'm here in the Midwest. So I've kind of sampled the culture all across the country, and there's a lot of different forms that swim team. Club swimming comes in, the coach owned team, the board run team, the organizationally run team, the YMCA, or around here, it's Lifetime is a gym that runs a swim team, and all different philosophies and different motivations, different purposes, right? And so, we were visiting just a little while ago about how I got to having a coach-owned team, which I was pleased to see at the World Clinic was one of the topics on the list. Was they actually had a talk about coach-owned teams, and I wish I had been available to attend that one. For a lot of coaches, that's the dream. That's like the holy grail. I mean, at least the ones that have had been put through the ringer with their board run team, right? Because there are board run teams that where there aren't a lot of problems, where it's pretty harmonious relationship. I know in my talks with Ron Aitken at Sandpipers in Nevada, he was very glad to be working for a board run team, and he often positively commented on it to me about the advantages of that, all the talents that are brought to the table and the things that are taken off of his shoulders because he has competent people to take those things on. And I get that, and that's great if you're in a large metropolitan area and you have a good sized team with a good pool of professionals to draw from. My personal experience for most of the last 33 years has been coaching small teams in smaller towns where that's much more challenging. And so the small town club team scenario is much more often fraught with more challenges with coach and board, because you have teams, of 50 or 100 swimmers, which are much more common actually in USA Swimming than the team of 1,500 swimmers, right? Your 100, number team is actually, there's more of those. And those are the ones where it's often a challenge to find those people, those professional people to serve on a board with the right kind of attitude, with the right philosophy. They're not just looking out for their child. They actually have some skills to bring to the table, that have the time and want to serve, that believe in the mission. It's a little harder to find. And so you have these small teams where you have just a couple of board members change, and now the philosophy of the team's going in a whole new direction, because you have this little group of people that are going different direction depending on which way the wind blows. And so for people like me who have most of their experience as the small team, the coach owned team is like, please, someday I want to own my own team. And I got pushed there eventually in Las Vegas, and had a wonderful experience having my own team. It was really a dream come true, but Las Vegas was never going to be home. My wife and I had a daughter that we wanted to raise in more of a lifestyle like my wife and I grew up with in the country. Um, Raising animals and being self-reliant, and in a small town where if you're speeding, somebody's going to see you and tell your dad they saw you speeding. We wanted a different life for her, my wife and I had when we were growing up. So we were there in Las Vegas for our careers, and having my own team there, we had between 50 when we started. We got up to almost 100 with our little team that we owned in our Swim America program. We had another, 80 to 100 students, and made a decent living, and was taking kids to nationals with a small group like that. And my wife's job went really well. And so it put us in a position where we could live wherever we wanted instead of where we needed to. We went to Las Vegas for our careers, for good positions, but now we wanted to live where we wanted and then do what we wanted in that place, which what brought us to North Central Texas, to this small town we're about 40 minutes outside of Fort Worth. When we moved here, there wasn't traffic. Of course, over the last few years, everyone's moved to Texas. So now in our little town that had 2,000 people when we moved here, now it has 3,500 people. And the surrounding area outside of Springtown has just really boomed. So now it's a lot harder to get out of my driveway. But I came here, and actually went back to coaching for somebody else. I didn't start up my own team, but I went back to work for coaching for Lifetime. and had a great time there. Started a brand new program from scratch, which has kind of been what I've always done, is either started a program where there wasn't one or took over a dying program and brought it back. I think it's helped keep me on my toes and helped me become a better coach because I've never had that position where I had this big team just feeding me talent. I think sometimes coaches get lazy because they've just got this flow of talent coming in and you can just throw a bunch of yards at them and some of them are going to go really fast. And it kind of stifles the whole innovation and thinking outside the box and things you need to do if you only have a small handful of swimmers and you got to try to accomplish something. You have to you have to try harder, you know.
I think with your history, having dealt with a lot of these small programs and either rebuilding dying programs or building them from scratch, what are some of the things that you would say, like what are some of the learnings you've had from that experience, within that environment, and anything that you could share that might be like helpful to other coaches in that same position who might be building up a program, starting one, or might also just be like younger coaches who, that's the environment they're starting in.
Yeah, I think the attraction to larger programs for the young coach is obvious because the coaches that are making a good living just coaching are coaching these ginormous teams, right? Or they're college coaches, or they're coaching these big clubs like Sandpipers, or here in the DFW, LAC, Lakeside Aquatic Club, these multi-location, monster organizations. And in a lot of ways, it can be much more fulfilling to coach at a small club. So one of the reasons that I was as successful as I was is there were a lot of athletes that I coached from like 10 to 18. Well, in a large club, you don't do that, right? You only do that with a small club. My first club I was the head coach for, I had 50 swimmers. And I had swimmers that I took from age 10 to the juniors. And depending on your reasons for coaching, and mine weren't financial, mine were to work with young people and to try to leave the world a little bit better place than you found it by making a positive impact on the next generation. And if you care about that side of it, not just the competitive side, not just your resume and furthering your career, but actually helping to create solid young people that are going to be go on and then make a positive impact. It's really probably as good or better place to do it is in the small program, right? But the salaries are smaller too. So, which brings me to Swim America, which was just a genius idea on the part of the American Swim Coaches Association. They saw the same thing that I've seen over the years, which is a lot of coaching talent leave the sport because they can't support a family. The really, really great coaches don't need to coach swimming. Like they could do lots of things and provide for their family better, or have a better, financial future doing other things besides coaching swimming. But we've lost some really great potential top coaches to it's not profitable. It's not financially beneficial. And so they saw that and they filled that hole with Swim America. Like, look, you can run this profitable side business and fund your coaching habit, which we all have done in some way or another. I've always been an aquatics director and then a coach, or some people are a school teacher and then they coach because then they get off just in time to go do the thing that they really want to do. But now you're working 60, 70 hours a week, which I did for many years. But with a Swim America program, you can provide for your family better with a whole lot less hours, especially now that Captyn exists. Because used to be, with Team Unify, I spent more time on the computer running the business than I spent training my coaches or in the water teaching swimmers. Now it's way the other direction. But anyway, I just see learn to swim in general, specifically Swim America, as a way that great coaches can coach a small program if you don't want to live in the city. So, I've coached small teams in small towns because I don't want to live in a metropolitan area. I don't like traffic. I grew up in a small town. I want to raise my kids in a small town. And And that comes first. And I wasn't going to live in the rat race just to maybe further my career, especially when, the first coaching job I had, and when I took the job, there were 25 kids on the team, and I built it up to 50 in a little town of 5,000 people on the Oregon coast. Within 3 years, I had a master swimmer that broke 9 world records. I had a couple of junior national qualifiers. I had a half a dozen like top 16 national kids in this little town. Like if you can be successful living somewhere where other people go for vacation, why would you not do that? Now, granted, I didn't make any money doing it. I worked for YMCA. I think my
Yeah.
salary at the time was like $1,600 a month,
Yeah. Yeah.
like at that place, and here I am. I've got one, my swimmer is calling me from London telling me, "Oh, I just broke the world record, in the 60 to 65 age group for the mile, and you're making $1,600 a month. It is ridiculous." But
So I'm curious, like, how did you get involved with Swim America? And is it pretty easy to get involved with Swim America? And would that be something that you recommend again to those maybe those people who really do want to be career coaches, but the finances just don't make sense? Because that really is a big problem for our whole sport. Even these competitive athletes that are looking at the enhanced games now, there's a lot of controversy there. But when you look at the money, it's like, well, at some point these athletes have to make decisions that are better for the family. I agree with you 100% too on like a lot of talent leaves the sport. There's been a lot of just general conversations around a lot of talented people tend towards some of these industries and jobs that just pay really well, but it would maybe be better for society if they were in other things like teaching
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
coaching. And so I think, yeah, how can we incentivize talented people to stay in here? And what are maybe some things that like they can do also in that process? I know you've already been kind of going towards swim lessons
Yeah.
and having that as kind of an ancillary thing that you do to kind of pad the finances.
Yeah, and which now for me has grown into the what I'm doing all the time now. Just because I did my time. It kind of sounds like you being in prison, but more so, I loved every minute of coaching for 33 years. But when I was coaching at the top of my career, my wife didn't see me 2 weekends out of every month, and I didn't get home until quarter to 9 at night. I was gone coaching morning practice. I'm up and gone before she goes to work, and by the time I come home at night, she's almost ready for bed. It's almost like being a coaching widow, almost. During the peak of the season, the championship. And there's those months of the year where it's more than 2 weekends a month, right? When it's if you're the head coach of a small team, you're going to the 10 and under champs, and then the age group champs, and then the senior, because you're a one man show, and now you're going to all the meets. So, but to answer your question about Swim America specifically, I'm a huge believer. I think it was a genius idea, and I think it is super easy to get involved with one exception. There's one major barrier, and that is water. Any coach can make a phone call to ASCA, and they can get you going, get you signed up for the next training. It's all packaged up very well. The trainings are terrific. They make it super easy, but where are you going to do it? Because most coaches, if you're coaching for a team that's renting a pool, well, you don't have access to that pool outside of the hours that your team has rented it for you to go and coach your practice. So where are you going to do this Swim America program? So maybe if you're lucky, maybe your team around here, at least there are teams like LAC that I know it's a couple of their locations. They have negotiated to run the swim lesson program versus around here, a lot of clubs swim at school district facilities. So, and it's different in different parts of the country, but in the DFW area, you have large school districts that have indoor 50-meter, 25-yard pools that some of which have farmed out swim lessons to the big club that trains there, because it's for the school district to operate them. It's a lot more overhead for it's a lot easier for them to farm that out and just ask for a percentage than to staff it, maintain it, and the hiring and all that goes into it. Right now, in other places that I coached, it's this was new for me, seeing an area where almost every team practices at a school district facility. I've coached for a lot of YMCA's and other parts of the country. You see a lot of teams that rent from a university or the Parks and Rec district pool. So, coming up in the Northwest and coaching in Southern California, I coached at facilities that were either YMCA owned, a city facility, city parks and recreation facility, or an athletic club. So it was my prior, before I came here. I'd never even seen a team that coached at a school district facility, but most Ys want to run their own swim lessons. Most cities with a Parks and Rec program want to run their own swim lessons. It's great that we have this. ASCA came along and provided Swim America for any coach out there that wants to do it. They make it foolproof. Like they'll train you how to run the program. There's a whole program. Here you go. And
That's
they don't
awesome.
ask anything really for it other than like a $600 a year where you get you get your certificates that you hand out and your stickers that you put on them and online trainings. It's a great deal. And probably 9 out of 10 coaches can't take advantage of it because where are they going to do it?
Yeah.
So, which is why I gave the talk last week in Reno, why I gave the same talk, tried to give the same talk 2 years ago in Dallas, but they only slated 45 minutes for it. And so we were like not even through the slides and they're like, oh, your time's almost up. So we're just skipping through the slides and we had no question and answer time. So we did the 90 minutes this time. It was much more fruitful. But I think that's the next gap that needs filled is the water. And the preconceived notion for many years has been you need millions of dollars, right? You have to get a committee together and it takes like 2 years and you get all these community partners together and you start a campaign and you get the city or this university or the school district to partner together and we got to raise, $30 million and we're going to build an aquatic center so that we can have swim lessons or a swim team. And that's just false. When I was coaching out in Georgia, I met a coach one time that was tired of working for a board, wanted to own his own swim team, and so he applied for like every credit card that he could, like all at once. Because when you apply for them, it starts to ding your credit. So he did like a dozen applications all at once and got all these credit cards and built his own pool. Right, built a steel building and put like an above ground pool and put a deck around it. And he's like, I'm going to do this, and it's a huge success. And it's probably the seed that was planted that eventually led to me doing my own thing is seeing other people like get outside of the box and have some courage and do something that is risky, right? So I've seen that like with Chattahoochee Gold building their own pool here in the DFW area. Texas Ford has their own pool that they built. Now, granted, that is probably a million and a half or 2 million. It's a 50-meter indoor, and I don't know how he went about doing that. But there's a coach that owns a team and owns a pool, a way bigger pool than what I have. But then you have Nitro down in Austin. I think they own their own facility, but there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And so if you're that small team coach, or maybe you coach at a big team, but you know, you're making 50 or $60,000 a year, you can't really support a family on that and you want to do something on the side, if you can build one lane, not even for swim lessons, you don't even need a lane. Now, I wanted to do private lessons with competitive swimmers. I needed 25 yards. And so I built 25 yards. But if you wanted to just do learn to swim, I mean, you could buy a shipping container and cut the top off and put it in the ground and put a liner in it and do swim lessons in your backyard if you're, on the side. The issue is not they have everything at their disposal except for the water. I would say
Yeah.
9 out of 10 coaches. And so I'd like to try to help out with that. Both times that I've given the talk at Ask a World Clinic about building a pool, coaches have ambushed me after my talk to ask me, "Are you going to franchise this?" And both times I've said the same thing. It's like, no, it really hasn't been on my radar because yes, maybe I've I'd be the perfect person to help them because I've done it and made it successful, and I can tell them what not to do when you build yours, don't make these mistakes, right? And how to cut costs and how to what online platform to use to manage your lessons and to take your payments, which I always tell them to sign up for Captyn. But I don't have an attorney on retainer that's gonna there's a lot of legal there's a lot of contract writing, there's a lot of stuff that's outside my wheelhouse to do that. So, I think that's the next thing is I think I'm going to look into that a little bit and see if I can't, find a partner and maybe franchise it so that there's a lot of coaches I think that would very much like to, and they're kinda on the edge, and they just want somebody to hold their hand to take the leap, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And
No,
it's,
it totally does. I was actually gonna ask you too if you had like, kind of a timeline that you've created or some like content supporting like chronicling your experience doing this. Because one of the things that you said as well, because I think and I love the title of the talk, build a pool for 50 grand. It's like it's sensational in the right way, right? It's like attention grabbing. It's like, oh, wait, that I have to see that because that could be a game changer. And I think, you and I were talking about that. I was like, okay, well, the initial pool was this. This is how much, the initial pool costs. And then, start running the business and build revenue and then
yeah,
reinvest that. And now what does it look like when you've got 100 grand into the pool? But it's like you don't have to start with the couple million
right.
dollar facility. It's like start small. And I like that entrepreneurial startup kind of approach to at the end of the day, how do you how do you make money bringing swimming to the community? And how do you do it in that sort of MVP type concept, which is like, what is truly the minimum viable pool? And actually, that might even be a good acronym to use: MVP, minimum viable pool, and play off the minimum viable products concept. Because I think, yeah, you're right. Our mind, I think, as coaches too, our mind not only goes to the $30 million facility, which is like, oh, you need this facility to grow a great aquatics program, because we're so focused on the elite level competitive swimming as well. I think it comes back to that, and also thinking about that being the opportunity in swimming, which is it's like at the highest level, and in reality, the money and the opportunity and the volume of
Yeah,
clientele actually is at the opposite end. It's
right,
complete opposite end because
right.
you just look at the numbers too. I mean, there's I think 50 to 65 million people in the United States doing swim lessons every year.
Wow.
And obviously, a big majority of those are going to be younger, but that like counts towards adults as well who are trying to get water safe. And yeah, it's really interesting to think as coaches, maybe that's actually where a lot of the opportunity is more on the swim lessons, getting them ready for team. I've always felt too that there's a lot of opportunity with swim lessons programs to focus on getting them ready for competitive team. Feels like there's a lot of water safety focus, which makes sense. That's the big impact and emphasis people are registering for some schools initially, right? It's like they either want themselves to be water safe or their loved ones to be, but then that's the perfect conduit into swim team. And I feel like that gap can oftentimes that there is a bit of a gap between swim lessons and competitive team, and kind of having a feeder program could be very lucrative. And so I wanted to ask you too, because I usually ask this at the beginning, but so Patriot, right? That seems to be so Patriot swim team in Las Vegas, now the Patriot Swim School in
Yep.
Texas. Can you tell me a little bit about that brand and maybe how that got started? Was Vegas really the first instance of that? Or where you started going with that Patriot brand? And then if you don't mind, also just kind of talk to me about how like Patriot Swim School got started in Texas and where you guys are
Yeah.
and stuff today, and just a little bit of history
Sure.
around that.
Yeah, so I'm a veteran. So I spent 6 years in the Army. My father was a veteran. We're a very patriotic family. We love our country, and when we started the first version of Patriot Swim Team, Patriot Swim School in Las Vegas, as I said before, was at Nellis Air Force Base, right? And so it was kind of perfect fit to that patriotic theme into our business, the limiting factor there was in order to do lessons for somebody at the pool that we used, they had to be able to get on base. So we had actually pretty limited market, right? Because not every you can't just drive on the Air Force Base at the time during those years, as maybe people had in previous years with increased security. So we had our team, in fact, all my competitive swimmers, the vast majority of them had to go through like this 2 week process of getting a pass, getting both parents being background checked by the Air Force and getting passes to get through the gate to come and have practice. And then, so basically, the swim lesson piece was just people who lived and worked on base. So, and it's a pretty large Air Force base. So we had We had a swim lesson program that helped make ends meet, but it's pretty small. Patriot Swim School, Patriot Swim Team were no-brainers for me. Where we were, who we were serving, and then my own personal views. The eagle head made, I thought, a great logo and a great cap. We had caps that had the head of an eagle on both sides, both facing forward, so that it was one way on one side and the other way, so it was always facing forward, and it was just uh, um, a fantastic look, I thought. And so when we left Las Vegas, moved out here, bought some property to have, to put down roots, because like I said, we had been in 4 or 5 states already, my wife and I, and always rented because we hadn't found our permanent place to put down roots and raise our daughter. And so we did that here. I had no intention of owning my own team again or running a Swim America program again. When this all came about, I was coaching for one of the big teams. The One of the school districts opened up a brand new natatorium not far from where we bought a house in Justin, Texas. The nicest natatorium in all the DFW area, indoor 50-meter, 25-yard with another 25-yard pool off to the side, fantastic exercise facilities, and in an area of some fantastic facilities, saying this is the best one. I mean, this is top notch. I mean, you can have junior nationals there easily. I know that Tags has been there. There's been a couple of big meets there. They might have had not junior nationals, but maybe futures. Anyway, fantastic facility. I managed to secure lanes there for one of the large multi-location teams. And so when I left Lifetime, I got a job coaching for a big team, and I I had spent the majority of the previous 30 years bouncing around, like I mentioned before, coaching little teams, starting programs, rehabbing programs. And so for the first time in my experience, I saw what it was like to be a part of a larger team in 12 months' time, starting from nothing, just a brand new facility that just opened up its doors. We got our location up to 160 athletes. I had 4 or 5 assistant coaches, and out of 160 kids, I'm just coaching the top 20. I'm coaching the national group. I'm coaching the top 20 kids on the team. And you have to understand, all my 3 decades prior, I mean, I'm coaching, I've got like a 10-year-old over here I'm trying to teach butterfly to, while I'm making sure my junior national swimmer over here is not missing his send-offs and keeping all those balls in the air and wearing all the different hats. And now here I am, after a year with this team. I've got a couple of kids, 2, 3 kids I'm taking to junior nationals every season. I've got 2 age groupers that are number one in the nation in multiple events each. And I'm only coaching 20 kids every day. And I've got this staff that's coaching the other 140 kids. And I feel like I made it. Like I'm finally, like that struggling actor that finally got the big role in the big movie. I was like, I've finally arrived. I've where I always dreamed about being. And a year into it, God says, "Don't trust this. This isn't going to last. This is going to go away, and you need to get ready for that." And I'm like, "Great! I'm finally comfortable for the first time in my life. I have a comfortable coaching position, and here I have this feeling every morning when I get up. I got to get ready. This is going to go away." So I go out in my front yard and I measure out, where I had the room for a lap lane. My front yard is like 100 by 200, and a lot of it's kinda was useless. I was mowing it for no reason. You couldn't even see it out the windows of the house. And so I went out there and I figured out where I could put a 25-yard lap lane, and I started digging, and what, 3, 4 months later, I had a pool, and then the next spring, I had a building over the pool, and April 1st that next spring, we taught our first swim lesson. So, and I have I can send you the PowerPoint presentation that I did at the clinic last week. I won't get into all that because that's like a whole hour talk just talking about how that came to be. But basically, I was working my dream job, and God said to me, "Look, this isn't going to last. You need to do something else." And so while I'm coaching and the head coach at this location, I've got national level swimmers. I'm going to coaching morning practice. I come home from morning practice, go out in the yard and start working on the pool until it's time to leave to go to afternoon practice, get back in the car, go to coach afternoon practice, come home, eat, write workouts, repeat the next day for about 4 or 5 months. Built this pool, The next spring, managed to put a steel building over that pool. April 1st, had our first swim lesson. The first week of July, my phone rings. The owner of the team says, "We're shutting down your location. It's not profitable enough. The management of the facility favors the other team. It's not worth it. You have 1 week and you're unemployed." So 3 months after starting our Swim America program in our own facility, I'm unemployed. But I also have in 3 months' time, I had 130 students, and I was making 3 times the salary that I was making coaching swimming.
You had talked previously about using Team Unify within other teams and just those existing tools being something that were taking you away from the passionate part of the business and spending a lot of time when you were in the swim team environment. But now being like in this environment now where you own this school program and with Swim America, but just in general, like, yeah, how has Captain been a part of that? Has it helped with, your day-to-day operations? Are there things you feel like, yeah, just Captain's been like really beneficial for throughout this process? And yeah, anything you'd like to say basically about, Captain's kind of part in this as well?
Sure, sure. So my previous experience running a Swim America program, we used Team Unify back in Las Vegas, and then here we opened up um, that April the 1st of 2022. I think we tried that first summer, we tried 2 other platforms other than Captain. Neither one was a positive experience, and we were probably coming to fall when I finally called up the person at ASCA who was basically, I forget the name of the position, but heading up Swim America. The director, again, I don't remember the title, but the gentleman that was overseeing Swim America for ASCA, just to ask, "Hey, what are other programs using? Can you?" And that pretty much everybody he was aware of was using the things that I had already used, Team Unify or Jackrabbit or one of these other ones. And he said, "But I had this great phone call earlier today with this guy named Win, who's got this new thing called Captain. I just talked with him this morning. You should give him a call." So like I hung up the phone and called Win, and I was like the very first person to talk to him after he reached out to ASCA for trying to get ASCA's, you know, support in directing, getting Captain out there, right? Building awareness, and what do we need to do to, how can we partner together? And so within hours of his first call to ASCA, I made a call to ASCA. We got hooked up together there, and I thought, well, we'll try it out. And I think I probably, because of my timing, maybe I got a little extra hand holding or whatever there at the being an early customer. But I felt like I was Captain's only customer. I felt like whenever I needed something or I had a question, like somebody was, call me right back, answer me in a chat online immediately. And the support was just fantastic, not to mention the fact that it was just so much easier to use than anything that I had used before. Once I learned the ins and outs of it, and really what I had to get over was learning to ask for help, right? Because I'm a pretty independent person. I've always been the head coach of pretty much every team I ever coached, right? And to send that email, to make the phone call when I didn't know how to do something was not natural to me. And then I was like, wow, I got an answer, and the answer was, like, so simple, and I wasn't accustomed to that because with the other platforms I had used before, it would either take a long time to get a reply, or the reply wouldn't be clear, or you would feel like you were bothering somebody, or maybe get the feeling like you were dumb, which some I'm sure many of my questions were, but nobody at Captain ever made me feel like it was an imposition to answer that question. And so by the time we got like 6 months, 9 months into it, I was like, "I'm sold. I'm done." It's like everybody that I've talked to either through tech support or seen at the booth at the World Clinic that is always bent over backwards to make our business a success. So, I mean, that's why I'm happy to do anything that I can to return the favor. I want to see Captain be successful because, I think it is hands down the way to go for any coach that, I want to see more coaches do what we've done so that they can both do something significant for their community, like you were saying earlier, something that really does matter, that does make an impact on the next generation, something that makes an impact on our communities and our society, helping parents raise good, solid kids that are like, contributing members of the community instead of a drain on society. And you should be able to do that and take a vacation once in a while. You should be able to do that and provide for your own kids. You should be able to be successful and do a worthwhile job. Just like school teachers you ought to be able to support a family being a school teacher. And you can't unless most school teachers are part of two income households, right? You can't be the sole breadwinner and be a teacher or a police officer or a coach, in this country. You have to be a CEO of a company to if you're going to have a parent that stays home, with the kids kind of a thing.
Last question I have for you. Can you sum up in one sentence what you like about Captain?
Yes, that's an easy one. Captain makes my life easier. That's what I like about it. Captain makes my life easier. Yeah, that's really easy. And that's the conversation that I was having with people at the World Clinic last week is like, this one is, only this percent of my monthly gross, but Captain is this percent. It's like, what's your time worth? I probably average like less than an hour a day, like running my business, like on the computer. You know what I mean? I mean, I spend way more time face to face with my customers, in the water teaching lessons, like juggling kids around. Registering a new swimmer is measured in seconds, not even minutes, right? I can register a new swimmer in a minute with Captain. It's like that. It's ridiculous the how much less administrative time running a swim lesson program is now compared to anything else that I've used. So it just makes my life easy. I feel guilty. Like I told my wife, she's a school teacher and she worked all day and then she stayed at school for like 4 hours because she's doing a new grade this year, a new class, trying to get things worked out. And she comes home late. I've got dinner ready and stuff, how's your day? How's your day? There was actually a point I was walking around the house looking for something to do. I'm looking at Captain. I'm like, okay, everybody's in the class they're supposed to be in. I've got like I'm looking around, I have nothing to do.
That's awesome.
Like, and for me, for somebody that worked like 60, 70 hours a week most of their life, being worked like a dog by the YMCA, and anybody who works for the YMCA who watches this is going to understand exactly what I mean. Wonderful organization, wonderful, wonderful mission, but they'll take as much as you'll give, and most of my employers being that way. And now I'm in the position where it's like, how can I use my extra time to maybe help some other coaches 20 years, 30 years younger than me do this decades earlier than I did it, right? Because now my coaching career, my competitive coaching career is done. And now I'm finally like taking my wife on, a 7-day Southern Caribbean cruise that I wish I could have taken her on, 15 years ago. And now I'm finally, doing that. But how can I help somebody your age do that 20 years sooner in their life? That's where I'm at.
So would you say prior to Captain, how much time do you think you were spending a day just running the business of the programs that you've been involved with? Like,
When I was in Las Vegas, it was 3 or 4 hours a day on a regular basis of admin, of setting up classes, moving kids, setting up, yeah, just time on the computer that I hate. I wanna be on the deck. I wanna be inspiring some kid to do something he didn't believe that he could do before, not typing on a keyboard or, stuff that doesn't really affect anybody's life directly.